Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the arts, culture, and history in our region.
Hi, I'm Bob Dambach.
And I'm Barb Gravel. On this edition, we'll look at the risks of farming in Manitoba, meet a multifaceted artist, listen to a poem read by a state champion, and enjoy original rock and blues from a North Dakota trio. In the 1930s, Clay County artist Orabelle Thortvedt carved out a successful artistic career doing pet portraits for Minnesota society. But it is her work documenting prairie life that is her lasting legacy.
Orabelle was a very unique individual.
She loved animals. She was a painter, a sculptor, important local historian, documenter of everything, an obsessive documenter in the most wonderful possible way. Orabelle Thortvedt was born in 1896 and she died in 1983. She was the daughter and granddaughter of early Norwegian pioneers to the Red River Valley.
They came up from southeastern Minnesota in 1870 before the railroad arrived, settled with a number of family friends and family members along the Buffalo River northwest of Glendon. Orabelle's family had a strong sense of hanging on to their history. The whole family has it's almost a mania for documentation, and Orabelle was particularly interested in that. From a very, very young age, apparently, was fascinated with their family's history, with their background, their trip that came from Norway to the United States, and then this extraordinary covered wagon journey from southeastern Minnesota up here to Clay County. That really informed much of her early life and her artwork as well. Orabelle wasn't above using the materials that she found right there on the farm.
Right beneath this, black Red River Valley topsoil, you dig underneath that and you have clay.
She and her sisters did sculptures using clay from the banks of the Buffalo River right on their farm.
She would carve life-size sculptures of horses or figures of women into the banks of the rivers.
These were temporary things. She knew that these wouldn't last. With the next rain, they would disappear. They were never fired or anything like that. But they just did it because it was fun.
The finished product wasn't the sculpture a lot of times, it was the photograph. Orabelle Thortvedt began her artistic career as just a talented amateur. She was on the farm. She had a lot of artistic talent, self-taught. But in 1930, she was able to get a scholarship to go to college in Minneapolis. The scholarship brought her to the Minneapolis School for Lip Reading because she was mostly deaf. And then she was also able to go to the Minneapolis Institute of Art School. And that's where she took drawing classes and sculpture classes and painting classes. While she was in the Twin Cities, she came to the attention of Mary Saunders Bulkley. And Mary Saunders Bulkley was I guess you might call her a socialite. She's somebody well-connected in high society in the Twin Cities. What got her to the attention of Orabelle was that she and her husband were animal breeders and of dogs. And so Orabelle did portraits of her dogs. She was very happy with it, and she organized a fancy tea party at her house and invited a lot of people from the art world to meet Orabelle Thortvedt, and it paid off. Among the art people there was Clement Halpers, and Clement Halpers was kind of the kingmaker of 1930s Twin Cities art scene. He was also the organizer of the biggest fine art show in Minnesota at that time, and maybe even still today actually. It's the Minnesota State Fair Fine Arts Building. He selected Orabelle as one of 12 artists to be given their own display at the 1934 Minnesota State Fair. She has a few years of great success, but she's kind of brought back home in 1936, October of 1936. She loses both of her parents.
She adored her parents and doted on them, loved listening to stories that were told about their experiences coming to the United States and coming up here to Clay County. She was very, very concerned. We can tell from her entries in her diary that the well of history is now closed, it's dried up.
Starting in the 1940s, her focus really shifts to writing and researching the family history, researching the history of the Buffalo River settlers.
She also started on a couple of scrapbooks that she illustrated heavily with her own sketches, one she called Old Biography.
The Old Biography sketchbook, you don't find that kind of stuff anywhere. It's just illustrated biographies, illustrated portraits with watercolor and ink of regular people.
People that she knew in the Buffalo River area up there northwest of Glendon. And she goes into graphic detail about the individuals and what they were like, their personalities, and she was quite clear about how she felt about the various different individuals and the stories that she told about them.
And it's just delightful to read them, and some people come to the archives to do a little research on maybe a great-grandpa or a great-grandma, and if they're from the Glendon area, we probably have a portrait of them.
One of her favorite scrapbooks was buildings, actually. What she'd do is she'd go around to her neighbors and historic structures in Clay County, not only do sketches of the outside, but you go inside the homes and sit down and do floor plans and make detailed drawings of where the stoves were and what kind of stoves they were. It's absolutely extraordinary.
It's not only a fantastic, almost unheard of, just historic documentation, it's attractive to look at. They're great sketches.
Les Goropat is a multifaceted artist who resides in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota. His work includes photography, printmaking, and fiber art, just to name a few. His passion for graphic design has been the root of his employment at Prairie Public since 1975. Here's a chance to get to know Les Goropat.
Cars are a great subject for photography or any other kind of artwork because they can stand still, they can move. We all have experiences with them. The kinds of design that's gone into cars is incredibly varied. The possibilities are really endless with that kind of photography. I started at Prairie Public right out of college, and I've been working at Prairie Public ever since then. I was hired basically as an art director, graphic designer at Prairie Public, working in marketing essentially, and that's still what I do. I do primarily print design. I've done some work with set design and those sorts of things, but most of what I do is promotional graphics of one sort or another, our monthly program guide magazine, advertising, packaging for our video products. I like to tell people that, I haven't had just one job. Every time the technology shifts, I get a new job because I get to learn new techniques and new styles, new ways of making ideas happen. I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, born on Flag Day. I'd been doing something with art ever since I could hold a pencil. My dad worked as an accountant. He'd bring home 3H pencils, the really hard ones, and he worked for a newspaper, so he'd bring home newsprint. So I had these really hard pencils on this really soft paper, and I had to figure out how to draw on them. So from a very young age, I developed a light touch with drawing. So that was really my first exposure to art. And in high school, I took some art classes, of course. I was also on the yearbook staff, which gave me a chance to start learning about photography, and spent a lot of time on the sidelines of football fields, taking photos of athletes coming at me with a double lens reflex camera, and they would go this way, and I would have to go that way to catch them. And so I kind of learned how cameras and lenses and light worked, which I continue to this day in photography. Like a lot of kids my age, at that time I was interested in the design of cars and what was done with them. The history of car design is something else that I find particularly interesting, to see what's actually been done with the basic form of, 4 wheels and a seat. I could photograph the cars and document, here is a 57 Chevy and there is a 62 Studebaker, or whatever it is. Or I could go to a different level and be working with the colors and textures and shapes, which is what I prefer to do with photography with respect to cars. There's also a number of things you can do just studying the various kinds of textures and reflections and colors that you see on any given car. I could easily spend dozens of frames just photograph one single car. I'm not really taking a photo of the car itself, but I'm photographing what I see around the car, or the forms and the shapes that the car creates, or its relationship to its space, reflecting the sky. That's really part of the joy of looking at art. To see art, or to see the world in a different way through art, and to see what artists do with it. I think some of the most interesting feedback I've gotten recently was with a series of car photographs I did in which I worked with the idea of the reflection that's on the surface of the car. When you have a reflection, of course, things are backwards or upside down. So I literally turned the photographs upside down to see what they would look like, and it would turn this photograph of a car into a landscape, essentially, with kind of these automotive trimmings around the horizon. One of my favorites that I've done recently is the Fargo Theater reflected in the hood of a Buick. What I like about it is kind of the ambiguity of the hood ornament on the car appearing in the horizon of the sky, and trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a sun, it looks like a star, as well as just the icon of the Fargo Theater being part of the image. Another photograph that I like, very simple one, of the back window of happened to be a 51 Chevy, but the owner had put the words "Good night, Irene" on the back windshield of this car, and then reflected in the window was some beautiful clouds that particular day. In talking with the owner, I found out that that was the kind of car he had when he was courting his wife in the 50s, and when that song, "Good Night, Irene," was popular. So that was why he did that. But for me, it was significant too, because my mother, who happened to be named Irene, had passed away about a year before that. So to me, it was kind of an expression of who she was and how she relates to my photography.
Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene.
Farming has been a big part of Manitoba since the 1800s. Farmers still face many challenges every year to ensure their harvest makes it to your plate. Here's a segment from Prairie Public's award-winning documentary series, Built on Agriculture.
Farmers by nature, by their existence, they risk. I've yet to meet a farmer that fails to understand what risk is all about. Anybody that invests a lot of money and throws all of the products that they buy onto the soil with the great hope of reaping something from that is a risk taker. Farmers minimize their risk through knowledge and through active testing on their own.
There's an old saying in risk management, if you don't manage your risks, they could very well end up managing you. It's a leap of faith to go into business on your own, and farming is absolutely that. There are a lot of moving parts in developing an appropriate crop in an appropriate way without having an impact on the environment or your land base. Every year is an unknown.
I'm Cam Henry. You're in Oak River, Manitoba which is on the western side of the province and a little bit north of TransCanada. I'm a farmer, and in the farming context, we're in the seed business. So we grow, process, and retail seed. We're what you call in Manitoba a century farm. So we go back to the early 1880s. So my grandfather was here first, my dad, myself, and now my daughter and son-in-law are farming with us. When I was young, I started in terrible times. I started in the late 60s. It was terrible times. We weren't making any money at all, and yet I saw nothing but opportunity. And now we're in very good times, and when I'm looking around, I'm looking for the pitfalls, just as you get older, you get a little more conservative, and you don't have as much time to catch up if you make a major mistake. In agriculture, as the more acres you apply to grain farming, the cost per acre to seed them of input costs is the same. So much fertilizer per acre, so much spray, so much seed, those things are the same, whether you got 100 acres or 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres. So you do put a lot of money out there at risk if the world turns against you. And the one thing that farming does have is you have to be willing to take risk. The biggest factor that affects how well my farm produces is the weather, and I can't control it. That's a tough game to be in if the biggest influencing factor you can't control.
Poetry Out Loud is a contest that allows students to learn about great poetry. Caroline Huber of Minot was North Dakota's 2016 Poetry Out Loud champion. Here she recites the bone-chilling poem, Wendigo, by Louise Erdrich.
You knew I was coming for you, little one, when the kettle jumped into the fire. Towels flapped on the hooks and the dog crept off. My third poem was Wendigo by Louise Erdrich, and it's about the monster, the Wendigo, from Native American mythology. And that one was just a different poem from all the others I had looked at. All the poems in there are pretty stereotypical, love and all these soft emotions, and then there's this poem that's dark and it's about starvation and being cold in this warm world and wanting something warm again. I ended up picking that because it was so different and I could explore different areas than I could with my other poems. Wendigo by Louise Erdrich. For Angela. The Wendigo is a flesh-eating, wintry demon with a man buried deep inside of it. In some Chippewa stories, a young girl vanquishes this monster by forcing boiling lard down its throat, thereby releasing the human at the core of ice. You knew I was coming for you, little one, when the kettle jumped into the fire. Towels flapped on the hooks and the dog crept off, groaning, to the deepest part of the woods. In the hackles of dry brush, a thin laughter started up. Mother scolded the food warm and smooth in the pot and called you to eat. But I spoke in the cold trees. New one, I have come for you. Child, hide and lie still. The sumac pushed sour red cones through the air. Copper burned in the raw wood. You saw me drag toward you. Oh, touch me, I murmured, and licked the soles of your feet. You dug your hands into my pale melting fur. I stole you off, a huge thing in my bristling armor. Steam rolled from my wintry arms. Each leaf shivered from the bushes we passed until they stood, naked, spread like the clean spines of fish. Then your warm hands hummed over and shoveled themselves full of the ice and the snow. I would darken and spill all night running until at last morning broke the cold earth, and I carried you home, a river shaking in the sun.
The Randy James Band from Mandan, North Dakota have their roots set firmly in the past with a mix of rock music and blue-collar lyrics. Yet their original creations convey a true sense of timelessness.
The way we write songs is kind of unique. Somebody might just say something in a conversation and the light bulb will basically go off in Randy's head. He'll start playing a few bars. Next thing you know, we've got a song done. We've actually challenged people when we're playing live to just pick a subject and we'll write a song right on the spot. And we've done that before, so it really comes easy for us.
A three-piece band, you have to be pretty energetic because there's only three of you on the stage, so you got to keep moving and you got to keep the energy up and going. We've been together long enough. If Randy starts a song, I pretty much know what he's going to do, even if it's something that he's jamming on that we have never played before. So that's something that you develop over the years. It takes a while to develop that.
We all, as artists, I think, kind of go to different spots for inspiration, and we all have to eclectically go there and make it work for ourselves. And us guys, I should say, together seem to have that spark and good relationships. That's been a real inspiration. The guitars in the foreground are two of the guitars I've built. I'm always trying to be busy with my hands. You know, I just have to I have that drive for some reason. I think it's a good thing to share with people because it inspires other people and to say, you know what, do it, go do it. With my kids, I always say, you know, effort's one of the biggest things that people don't do is give something effort because we're always learning and we're always going forward, and it just takes effort and persistence to go after things.
It's nighttime, and the night is closing in. Take me for a fool, you know I can never win. The writing is on the wall. You take me for the line. Every day and night, you know, it'll be alright. Written on the wall, written on the wall. No one left to call. Written on the wall. These silent times, you know it's hard to feel what you feel. Carry me away with your love. I can see it standing there. Written on the wall, written on the wall. No one left to call. I'm written on the wall. Written on the wall, written on the wall. No one left. written on the wall, written on the wall, written on the wall, written on the wall, written on the wall.
If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make for an interesting segment, please contact us at prairiemosaic@prairiepublic.org. I'm Bob Dambach.
And I'm Barb Gravel. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.